Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, we're all laser focused on the final shape right now. Everyone knows that the stakes are incredibly high and that the Witness needs to be stopped. If it succeeds, then all life in the universe will be forfeit, and the Witness will be able to remake everything as it sees fit. Elsie Bray, aka the Exo-Stranger, has hinted that she's never seen a timeline in which the Witness, or at very least the Darkness as she put it, hasn't succeeded, and that ours is the first timeline that potentially has a chance to see victory. Everyone else is focused on victory, but realistically that leaves us with only half of the question answered. The other half is this: what happens next? I know that this question comes with two things really loaded in it. First of all, it comes loaded with questions given that we have no idea what the effect of us defeating the Witness will be. For the moment, I want to just push all of those possible questions aside and just assume that if the Witness is defeated, the universe will continue to spin as it normally does. Earth-shattering things are absolutely possible, but I don't want to touch on those possibilities here. I want to just assume that the world will keep turning. Secondly, I know that discussing anything that comes after Final Shape has to make mention of the 3 episodes that are slated to come after, but again, I don't want to talk too much about them either. We don't know that much about them, and at the moment I just want to focus on the bigger picture. The bigger picture particularly as it pertains to the prospects of humanity, and I want to share why I think that puts humans in such an interesting position as we go into Destiny's inevitable second saga. To give you the short summary of it, I think that humanity is going to be one of the most powerful forces within the universe after everything is done, assuming that we are victorious against the Witness. Humanity stands a chance at becoming an interstellar empire, or perhaps establishing an interstellar alliance, if all of this pans out well enough. If you were to ask me why, I think it really comes down to 3 fairly clear factors: our allies, our technology, and the Guardians. There are a few hindering factors as well, and we'll go over them in more depth too. To me, those include territory, division, and population. It's a lot to jump into, but let's start with the more positive side of things as far as humanity is concerned, and then let's talk about the bad. So, starting with that human positive position, in the scenario where the Witness is defeated, it's one of those moments where we would look around us and see the state of the system changed forever. The great forces that have massed against us have lost their purpose, and whilst I'm sure some of them would fight on, we are now no longer alone because we have allies. I am of course making reference to the coalition that has been formed between the Lost City, the Awoken of the Reef, the Cabal of Kytel's Ascendancy, and the Elixni of the House of Light. To put it quite simply, for the near entirety of humanity's days after the collapse, humanity has been cut off and surrounded by enemies on all sides. The Vex claimed worlds like Mercury and Venus, and dozens of other smaller planetoids. The Elixni were raiding Earth, the Hive set up shop on the Moon, and the Cabal Scout Legions created a hefty presence on Mars. Granted, there are multiple forces across all these worlds that are contesting them, but the Guardians have had to deal with all of them. Now though, we have allies that not only presently are with us and give us the possibility of a reprieve from hundreds of years of sieging and violence, but they also have powerful assets at their disposal. Both the Awoken and the Cabal have sizable fleets of various compositions that can leverage their strength in space and low orbit. The Awoken and the Elixni are particularly adept at small-scale infiltration and have elite troops if needs be, and the House of Light's Splicers and the Cabal's Scions represent a unique asymmetric asset that could be used as needed and should not be underestimated. And this is to say nothing of Mara Sov and her Techeuns and their own paracausal magics. And then of course, there are the Guardians themselves who have been able to bridge the gap between all of these factions, and in some cases can act fully as intermediaries. Lord Saladin has integrated fully into Kytel's Ascendancy. Crow has persistently sought to offer aid and camaraderie to the House of Light. Our long-standing working relationship with Petra and Mara Sov has given us strong ties to the Awoken. It'd be cynical to assume that such an alliance would fall to pieces if the common threat of the Witness was to be destroyed, but I think that's not necessarily accounting for the fact that these various factions have bound themselves together partly out of necessity and partly because they have mutual respect. The Cabal now watch Iron Banner matches and cheer on Guardian competitors, even taking on their own in a virtual simulated sense in which they are known not as the Iron Wolves, but instead are known as the Iron Warbeasts. This is imitation, and that would probably be the most direct form of flattery that one could imagine. Saladin himself is not only someone who hosts the Iron Banner for both the Guardians and the Cabal, but now is a respected Valis amongst their people, and one of the most trusted advisors of Empress Keitel. The enemy that once ruled the Last City and caged the Traveler now stands in defense of it, and has bled to keep the Witness's forces from reaching the Traveler. This, of course, also does not consider the fact that the Cabal had to accept our terms of peace first, meaning they had to humble themselves even briefly and accept our point of view. So this has opened their mind to more ideas of negotiation. Our ability to directly help Keitel also hasn't hurt. The rift between the Elixnian humanity has not been fully healed, but is definitely well on the way to being so, not least because of the events of the Season of the Splicer. Each side of this conflict was forced to see how monstrous they'd been to each other. Saint 14 learned of how his legend had been portrayed as a monstrous devil within the Elixni's culture, and ultimately he vowed to do better. Namrask worked to abandon his old ways as the former Kell of the House of Devils, who burned Golden Age London to the ground. He became a peaceful weaver, and chose a life of peace alongside his new name. The Awoken and humanity have worked alongside one another long enough that Mara Sov has gained a degree of trust with us, one that did not previously exist. She has not only named many Guardians to her Queen's Guard back in the Season of Defiance, but also named not one but two mortal humans there as well. The Knights of Valor that would fight on her behalf would normally be restricted to the Awoken of her own ranks, often being held by high-level paladins, but at this moment we now represent some of the most elite forces that fight on the Awoken's behalf. All of this has been aided by our ability to wield the darkness, and has given Mara an appreciation for us that she hasn't previously extended to Guardians before, who she has seen as unbalanced and chaotic. However you view it, our allies have made us powerful, and we've only grown closer to them. We have more reasons to fight together than we've ever had before. And then, of course, you have to consider our newest allies, the Neomuni. To suddenly reveal that an entirely different enclave of humanity has survived is one thing. To say that for the longest time they've thrived is another entirely. That also brings me neatly to my next point, which is technology. Assuming humanity bands together more closely as a united force across both the Last City and Neomuna, all of a sudden we have to contemplate this. The collapse never truly destroyed humanity's technological edge entirely. Certainly we'd be advanced beyond compare of anything in the solar system if we hadn't been attacked by the Witness, but the Neomuni never stopped advancing even after the collapse had ravaged Earth. For all the Golden Age technology that's so highly valued in the Last City, none of it compares to what the Neomuni have accomplished. The best example of this is in their most powerful technology, and the one that is most obvious, their nanites. They arrived on Neptune with Siva, a technology that might have been able to change the fate of Dark Age Earth, but in the hands of the Neomuni, it became even more advanced thanks to the integration of Vex technology, and now is the basis of Cloudstrider armor, augmentations, weapons, and many of the more astounding creations of the city. With this new technology in hand, there's a chance that humanity would be able to quickly expand out and claim an incredible technological edge. Humanity under threat has had to adapt and make do, but without the pressures of such constant strife, it might be possible for the people of Earth and the people of Neomuna to suddenly become a technological superpower of immense might. Remember as well that this is not just about nanites, it's about every advancement the Neomuni have been able to make in secret. For day-to-day citizens in the Lost City, I imagine the prospect of rocketing to post-Golden Age Neomuni tech would be a little bit like handing a Zippo lighter to a caveman. Such incredible tech in the hands of someone who has had to live without that tech for hundreds of years is a potentially unifying boon for humanity, and would boost our chances of surviving and expanding significantly. But no technology is going to replace the true edge that we have coming out of a conflict from the Witness and succeeding, and that of course is the Guardians. Assuming the Witness is dead, the Guardians will stand as some of the most powerful paracausal forces in the universe. We would have to, of course, make the big assumption that the Traveler would also survive in this instance, which I think is reasonable to make. If it does, then there would be only a potential few that might really pose a threat to us. Of course, Savathûn and Sivur Arath are still great enemies we'd need to contend with, and there are certainly powerful outliers within the system and beyond, such as Fikrul, aka the Fanatic of the Scorn. We'd also have no idea how many more of the Witness's disciples remain, even after we've felled a few of them at our own hand. There may still be more out there that just haven't necessarily been encountered yet. But regardless of all of this, I think Guardians will stand as some of the most powerful combatants in the history of the universe. Those who have been able to wield both light and dark. Those who have been able to control their own destinies. Few would be able to match the power of immortal Godslayers, whose powers can break the laws of the universe themselves. With all the other advantages I've already mentioned above, I think the likely path of humanity is one of prosperity, and if things turn very dark, perhaps even hegemony. But this is why I'm glad we have our allies. There are certain sage characters within that group of allies within the coalition that will probably help to rein in any worse instincts from various members of humanity. Even the Cabal, who are more territorial and warlike, have, under Keitel's leadership, seen a change in some of their cultures. The loss of their homeworld has undoubtedly humbled them, and Keitel's move to free the Scions from slavery has gone a long way towards changing the perspective that many of the Cabal might have. That said, it still puts us in a relatively similar position. If all goes according to plan, and if all seems to work out well on the other side, humanity will be in a fairly dominant position and may be able to go out into the stars and decide the fate of the universe. If they do decide to do so, there is very little that'll be able to stop them. That said, we should talk about the very real hindrances to human success after this time, because those hindrances certainly do exist, and I believe the main three of them to be as follows. Again, territory, division, and population. The first obstacle is territory, and I'm using that word very loosely because it also summarizes the fact that, frankly, we are already also still surrounded by our enemies, and there are many more of them now than there used to be, and their forces are somewhat more concentrated in some areas and somewhat less in others. The really clear point is this. Humanity is down to 2 cities located about as far away from each other as possible within the solar system. Generously, that means we're in control of 2 planets in the solar system right now, and that truly is being generous given that we're actually really in control of 2 fortified enclaves. Even with the assistance of our allies and our incredible powers as Guardians, there is no way we can properly recolonize Earth at any reasonable speed. There's just too much of it for the limited forces we have to truly bring civilization back with any urgency. It's also worth remembering that there are tons of factors that make recolonization of some of our old worlds dangerous and nearly impossible in some instances. The first and most obvious of this is that our enemies that I mentioned earlier are still on these planets in force, be they the fallen houses of Dusk that have cropped up all over the place, or the Cabal remnants of the Red Legion and Callus. And of course, that's to mention nothing of the more insidious foes that will be hiding throughout the system. Undoubtedly, that includes the Vex and the Hive, who've both been able to burrow deep into the marrow of our worlds and take control of them from their cores. It's clear what happened last time we tried to retake the moon was a disaster, and whilst I don't want to write the moon off entirely, it may be a lost cause. Mercury and Venus also represent a similarly daunting prospect, with the Vex having changed the planets into practically what are known as thinking machines. The planets are more Vex than they are planetoid. It's not exactly clear that the odds are in our favor, and it's not really clear if we can even purge a Vex planetoid. I don't think it's ever been done. Of course, this also leads us to the minor point that if we were going to recolonize places, we would need people to recolonize them. And this leads us to what I think is the biggest barrier to wide-scale human expansion, and that is population. There are no official numbers stated anywhere in the lore, as best I can tell, for what the population of either the Last City or Neomuna is. But the fact is that humanity needs to repopulate these worlds from just 2 cities worth of people. Now, we could be generous and say that the Last City has something akin to 10 million people, but if we are going to do that, we need to acknowledge that that's a dangerously low number. there's plenty of studies out there that prove that the lower your population gets, the more trouble you're going to have at potentially surviving, whether it's due to genetic diversity or a sizable enough population to survive sudden shocks like natural disasters or war, or whether it's just having enough people to make the right resources that need to be provided for your population. There are a dozen different ways that our civilizations can go the way of the dodo, and the lower our population is, the more those problems then start to compound. Of course, this is the future, and fascinating future solutions to problems do exist, but I won't lie, it's a worrying place for humanity to be. With humanity having staved off the very real threat of extinction in the past, though, I don't think it's entirely impossible that we could repopulate. But no matter how you slice it, that's going to be a slow process taking generations, not least because of the need to make the worlds safe again, but also because human lifespans are far, far longer now than they used to be. Finally, though, there's something we need to look at in depth, which is the nature of humanity's own internal divisions. Right now, the clearest division that we have is between the Earth-born peoples and the Neomuni. This is only technical for the moment, but the Neomuni have been really clear and firm about holding their isolationist stance for some time. Remember that it was their choice to abandon us because they discovered that the Lightbearers were in fact tyrannical in the time of the Warlords, and assumed that it would still be the case. Remember that they deliberately erased all records of their own existence from the Warmind when they discovered this fact. That sentiment has stayed about for a long time and hasn't been broken since. Our actions in protecting the Veil from destruction have gone some way in buying trust, but the Neomuni will be a challenging ally to work with at first. We may have the favor of Nimbus, but they're one of the only ones who's really in our corner at the moment. Important as the favor of the one remaining Cloudstrider is, it's not the whole picture. The rest of the Neomuni are for the most part content to refer to us as warlords, and aren't truly aware of the changes that Guardian culture has gone through over the 100 years that the city has developed. Warlords aren't really a thing anymore. There are Guardians, and in some instances rarely there are Lightbearers, but for the most part, if a ghost resurrects someone and they aren't a hive, they are going to be aligned with the tower eventually. Then, one also needs to consider the divisions within the population of the Last City itself. There have now been 2 moments where factions have helped to split our population and peel people away from the Last City. The first was under Lysander and the Concordat. The second was under Lakshmi II, Executor Hideo, and Arak Jalal at the conclusion of the Season of the Splicer. Earth's human population in the city was both mentally and physically divided by these moments. Some people literally fled with the surviving faction leaders, both in the distant past under Lysander and more recently under Executor Hideo and Arak Jalal, and whoever commands the remaining FWC true loyalists. The mental and moral divide within the city, though, still potentially remains and might be far more troubling. It's worth noting that the city's population has gone through ups and downs in the past, but right now I think that as a population the city has almost never been this divided. Maybe the only time prior to this that's even come close or surpassed it is the time of the faction wars before the Vanguard was even established. Some citizens of the Lost City trust the Guardians, and some don't. Some believe in our new allies, and some have literally murdered them in cold blood. Some have even moved to see the Lost City as less of a refuge and more of a place in which they are forced to live by circumstance. The city is not a homogeneous pillar of humanity. It is divided and has many different opinions, and not all of them might be so beneficial if we're looking to have a united humanity expanding out into the stars, let alone one that needs to link up with the various allies that we've made, be they human or not. Regardless of how you slice it, humanity at current is not a unified force. Whilst the defeat of the Witness will save the universe, I hazard to say that it's not necessarily going to change the lives of ordinary people in the city that much. Whilst the defeat of the Witness will save the universe, I would stretch it to say that it might actually not do that much for ordinary people living in the city. Now that sounds ridiculous at first because of course, killing the Witness prevents the universe from ending and it means their lives aren't forfeit. It might be galvanizing to some citizens, but to others, it's really going to be a bit too high in the sky, if that makes sense. The idea of if this doesn't happen, your entire life is forfeit really doesn't present much room for wiggle room and stakes. I mean, of course it's good, but it doesn't change the fact that maybe you don't have enough food or water, maybe you're in a rundown dwelling somewhere in the middle of one of the city's less affluent districts, maybe you're in a place where you can't necessarily get everything you need, and those problems are still going to be there after the Witness has been destroyed. There may be some apathy towards those particular notions, and granted, there isn't as much lore evidence to suggest this, but it's here that it just needs to be pointed out. The big conflicts that only Guardians will see aren't necessarily going to immediately affect the civilians of the Lost City in quite the same way. That's kind of what I mean to say. All the pain and struggle that the Guardians have undertaken to reach that point might be reflected by apathy because there's no way that civilians can comprehend the danger that Guardians have gone through. They're just trying to live their daily lives, and the peace and security that we buy them every day isn't necessarily something they take for granted, but it is something that they can't imagine living without all that much. The Red War might have changed it, but even that doesn't give you a proportionate idea of what it would be like to have all life in the universe wiped clean from existence. It's just a stake that's so high that I don't know if killing the Witness would really change the mood of the city all that much. Regardless of where the various moods of the city are, regardless of how factions are divided and how divisions pan out, humanity is going to need to unite properly before we can contemplate its future. It will then have to work towards getting a comprehensive plan in place to recolonize the system, and power will need to be appropriately distributed and shared in a way that is amicable to all parties involved. No matter what, though, there are exciting adventures on the horizon, adventures that we can take place in, especially if we go out past the solar system. And this is why I think Destiny's next saga, its next series of adventures, is going to be so interesting. The reclamation of Reese, the liberation of Torobatl, the recolonization of the solar system, the final showdown against Sivu Arath, the newborn schemes of the Witch Queen, the fate of the fanatic Fikrul, the future of the Vex, the potential return of the Wish Dragons, and the chance for new adventures beyond the bounds of Sol. Who knows what's in store for us next, but regardless, I think a strong humanity awaits us on the other side of this conflict with the Witness, and if it does, it'll be an incredibly interesting time to be playing Destiny. But that's all from me for now. Let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments section. In particular, where do you think we'll be going after the final shape is done? It seems clear that our final battle with the Witness is going to change the universe a lot. All 3 episodes that we're seeing are going to apparently immediately follow on from the conclusion of our battle with the Witness. But it's then to say that big changes across the whole of the system, and perhaps the whole of the universe, might also be taking place. So if that is going on, go ahead and let me know what you think is going to happen next, and what's going to be most important out of all of that. Are there Awoken storylines you want to explore? Is there some weird facet of lore that perhaps leads us to different destinations? Is there a mystery that still remains unsolved? Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video though, go ahead and leave a like, and if you want more Destiny content from both Season of the Witch and Final Shape, go ahead and subscribe, and hit the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me. And in the meantime, my name is Byf. Parodasya ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.